Hey, everybody, it's Brian down here in Sicily. And today in the studio, I've got with me a good friend of ours, Stefano, visiting from Torino, down here in the deep south, visiting on site, on location, Mission Sicily, together with me and Gino. Welcome down south, Stefano. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great, and so I'm very happy to be on this podcast today and share, the great things that God is doing through our friendship. And I mean, and
Yeah.
also it's great to visit Sicily. It's like to come to this land.
Yeah, you were actually here once upon a time.
Yeah,
It not as a child, but in your younger years, let's say,
yeah.
you did some police service or military service down here for a time. Is that right?
No, no, no. I was living here when I was a kid, like 3 years.
Oh, you were.
Yes, I did the primary school, just the first and second class, but we
Oh,
was here for
wow.
3 years. Yeah, in Catania.
In Catania. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, welcome back.
yeah.
You've been
Thank
here
you.
down a couple times now, and we've
Yeah.
enjoyed having you down here. So, on today's episode, what I thought would be fun is to talk a little bit about the evolution of mission and the momentum that we're gaining in mission. So, we're going to have a bit of a story time sharing about how God has put our individual paths onto a shared partner path together, along with Gino, of course. And so to do that, I thought, well, let's start out just about Mission Sicily,
Yeah.
and then I'd love for you to share because I've been able to witness your journey of faith from kind of a fixed position, still in ministry, but leaving that position, stepping out in faith into full-time missions, a missionary just living by faith and doing things that you felt compelled by God to do, and how that faith has translated into our partnership, and it's fueling now Mission Sicily. And I think we were talking even yesterday, you've added such an incredible missing piece that Gino and I needed down here, and we're grateful for that. So, does that sound good to you? A little bit of story time, and we'll talk about what God's doing together with those things mixed together there.
Yeah, it would be fun. It would be great to share. So let's do it.
Okay. All right. Well, if you are tuning in and you haven't been part of the previous episodes of Mission Sicily, maybe you know a little bit about the story. I'm just going to give a quick overview to talk about how we find ourselves here, and then Stefano to share some of his journey. And then, I would love, at least by the end of this, after we've talked about the partnership that's been gaining some momentum, where we feel like God may be leading us in the next year. I think that'll be really exciting. So, all that to say, okay, let's start back 10 years ago now. Actually,
Yeah.
10 years ago this month, God, pushed us out of the nest, so to speak. And we came over here to Sicily, moved lock, stock, and barrel. And after about a year or two, visiting different churches, trying to understand the climate and the culture here in Sicily, especially within the evangelical community, we found ourselves at Gino's church. He wasn't the pastor at that time, but he was a leading member and the missions, or not the missions pastor, but the youth pastor at that church. And it was interesting. I think I mentioned this to you yesterday, the day before. It took probably a year for Gino and I to really find our footing together. Not because of any kind of incompatibility, but just because there have been a slew of missionaries come through, especially here in Sicily, and either they weren't focused on the Sicilians themselves, they were focused on refugees and things like that, and we're going to actually talk about that a little bit, but that wasn't our focus, or they focused on their ministry platform and what they were bringing in from the outside that they felt called to kind of import here. Well, it didn't always work out so well. Missionaries have left a lot of wreckage, spiritual wreckage over the years, and Gino was very aware of that and a little, let's just say, wary of another missionary, coming through. I I've said this before to those listening that 90% of missionaries coming through Italy, they only last about 3 years or less.
Mm.
To get past that 3 year marker really takes, and we've actually seen that here even recently. It takes a lot of intestinal fortitude. It takes endurance. It takes patience. And it takes, a lot of faith, and even as you've stepped out over the last couple of years, and you've felt that even as an Italian living here
Yes.
all your life, stepping out in faith in Italy is, it'll test your it'll test your gumption, man. So Gino and I, we kind of fell in together finally, and he kind of let his guard down and actually started talking to me, which was great. We're actually going to have him on a video. We're going to try to shoot tomorrow. I'm excited about that, and he'll get to share a little bit of his side of things. But after we had agreed on what our DNA would be, which is, and everybody who's been a part of Mission Sicily can probably rehearse this, but we are making disciples, planting churches, and building bridges of hope. That is our spiritual DNA. That's our mission. What we want to see, the vision for that is an expanding team, group, movement of disciple makers, leaders emerging who are becoming the planters of those churches, and these evangelical communities no longer being isolated and alone, but really integrated into the society around them. And so, fast forward, we began, teaching. We began a Bible school. We began doing lots of things internally inside of the church. And then after about 4 or 5 years, Gino became the pastor here, and we started planting churches in other towns around Bel Paso. We were on our second town, and with eyes on our third city here to plant new communities of faith, Bible communities of faith, going through kind of a discovery Bible process and introducing them to who Jesus is, and scripture and all of that. And then COVID and all of that hit, and a lot of our operations shut down. And I remember going back to the States for a year, dealing with some family business. And as I was talking with you and Gino at the same time, we began seeing a bit of a shift in how God was calling us to I don't know, to operate in the next season. Things that occurred during COVID forced us to do things in a certain way and reassess and reorient ourselves. And one of the things that you've added to our mix, and then I'm going to pass it over to you, Stefano, but one of the things you've added to our mix is emphasis on the practical side of disciple making, but not just to make disciples, but having disciples who make disciples, and
Yeah.
really a movement with an emphasis on simplicity and practicality and getting out there and actually doing it, which is exactly what we needed. And so I want to pause my story and the Mission Sicily side here and rewind a bit, because we crossed paths years ago. And one of the things that I've been able to witness in you is you had that kind of fixed ministry position, but your heart wasn't actually in the things that you were doing in the ministry, and it prompted you to, or you came to kind of a crossroads where you had to make a choice. Are you going to
Yeah.
keep doing ministry the way you were doing it, or are you going to take a step of faith, get out of the boat, get out of the comfort zone, and start walking the path where you felt like God was calling you to walk? So I'll let you pick up there. And so tell us about stepping out of the boat and what happened after.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's we have to at one point, make a decision in life. It's just one, if you want to follow Jesus or not. And sometimes the challenging question is like, do we really know what doesn't mean follow Jesus? what's the radical word following means actually. Okay, so that's something that I've been questioning in my life, and just jumping out of the boat was really radical. And that's for me happened because one guy, I mean, really come from the States here in Italy and discipling me like Jesus did with his disciple. So my story is all, rooted in disciple making, look at Jesus' life. And I remember that was a kind of a preparation period that see in Jesus' life, that he grew up, as a child in Israel, and being a family, and learning how to live among his people. And for me, it was a kind of, a preparation period that God was shaping myself, it's like, and how which kind of competence and skills I need, to grow and do the work he prepared for me. And actually that ministry position as before, God used that to put me in contact with people that was investing in my life. So, the cool things is like the story, a friendship with you, Brian, and Gino was a kind of, life. I mean, relationship is key for disciple making movement. I have a lot of relationship that God put on my journey that helped me to grow, and to grow as a leader in the movement, and to understanding, which is my calling in life. So, and then you get to that point that God is clearly telling you. I mean, that's for me happened on Sea of Galilee. You need to go and make disciple. I mean, that's it. So it's something that I don't know. I God shaping me. It's like heart of action, and I study economy, and I study business, and I love action. It's like, and just always looking, strategize, how what's look like. And when I discover the underline, in the gospel, the strategy of Jesus says, actually, there is something to do here. And I love the word, I don't know how to say in English, practicology. How you say that? Not theology.
Praxology, yeah.
I love it.
From the theology to
Yeah.
the praxology,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, that's right. And so that's was my when I step out of the boat and just following Jesus, and just be focused on the movement. That's the biggest challenge, was a kind of how I feed my family. It's like we proclaim that God provide, but what is in my heart? That was the
Right.
challenge. It's like that's the biggest challenge.
Because you
And
went from a fixed
yes,
position, essentially a job,
yeah,
right, where you're getting
yeah,
paid to do
yeah,
ministry work in a
yeah,
certain context, but that context didn't really give you the freedom to pursue disciple making like you
yes,
wanted to pursue it. And
yeah,
so you left that job completely
yeah,
disconnected from that so that you could invest yourself full time, but without a support base,
yeah,
without a covering, without, I mean, you you really, like, it was sink or swim. I mean, you
yes, that's
or
right.
walk, I guess.
Yeah,
Sink or walk in Peter's vision, I guess. That would be what it was. So he's gonna do one of the two,
yeah,
and you walked. I mean,
yeah,
you're still walking. So
yeah,
what did that, I mean, obviously, and we were friends already at that
yeah,
time, and I
yeah,
remember talking with you about that, about, hey, look, and ironically, we've had the same conversation, probably you and I, over the last year here with Gino,
yeah,
because now he's gone through that, and we'll get to that in a minute. But
yeah,
the idea, I think at that time, that we were encouraging each other in is, whether you've got a full-time job with a fixed income, and it's paying the bills, and you've got a salary coming in or whatever, or you've got absolutely nothing, zero stability, zero that you can count on, 100% risk. In either case, you've still got to walk by faith.
yes, yeah,
It's still a walk by faith, whatever God has called you to do. And that faith is going to be rooted in obedience.
yes,
And so you
absolutely.
got out of the boat responding to the call. Lord, if that be you, call me out on the water. And you did. Okay.
Yeah,
So let's pick up.
yeah. I
How did
can
that
tell you
go?
that I can tell you this walking on this water, I get wet a lot of time. So I was thinking all the time. So
There's a lot of wind and a lot of water.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of time. But the thing is, like, sometimes people says I live by faith. It's like, really we need to make a clear difference between live by faith and live by hope, because we live by faith when God clearly speak to you and says you need to do it, you need to go, and that's living by faith. You trust His word, you trust it, and that happened to me in Luke 5. In Luke 5, I'm just struggling, it's like what I need to do. And Luke 5, when Peter ran to Jesus, and Jesus look at him and says, don't be worried. I mean, just go and fish for men. And that moment, that morning, I still remember in my heart that God, Jesus telling me, you need to go, Stefano. I will provide for you. And
Wow.
he did. And I
Wow.
mean, it's like it's an amazing way he did. So I just want to encourage who is listening. If God is speaking to you, you need to be obey, be bold and obey and do it.
Yeah.
And so that's when I say we're living by faith, because we are people listening the voice of God. That's very important to underline. So, and that happened to me over 2 years. It was a 2 year process, because you struggling, you discuss with the Lord, and you tell you, are you sure what you ask me to do? I will say I will never speak in front of anyone, sorry, because I was shy. So I didn't like to talk to people. I didn't like to engage people in conversation. But I saw how God was good, and He equipped me to do the work He gave me to do. So that was amazing. And I mean, it's just like, I think the process of just spend time with the Lord, just be in His presence, be. It's the main part, and when He speak to you, you clearly hear His voice. You just need to obey, and then He is faithful, and He will do it.
Yeah. There's a really radical simplicity there of being in his presence, listening to his voice, and obeying what he tells you to do. But it seems like there's, and we don't have to go down. This might be a
Yeah.
bit of a rabbit trail, but it seems like that's where we get caught up so many times. And I know for our mission down here in Sicily, we were teaching. We went through a 5 year Bible school program, and we had people graduating from all 5 years. We were teaching. We were doing formation. We were developing, and but I don't know that we were really equipping so much for disciple making outside of the confines of the local church. And ironically, the lockdown that came here in Italy during COVID forced us to reevaluate, reassess some of our processes. And while we were planting churches as part of a disciple emphasis, it wasn't set up to be a multiplication movement. It was really me and Gino going out into these new towns, maybe taking one or two people along with us, but we weren't equipping everybody in the church to do disciple making. And so we weren't set up for multiplication. And that's really where me coming back and rebooting Mission Sicily in July of 2021. So 2 years now that we've been back on the field, and reintegrating what you and how God's equipped you and your wiring and your emphasis and your walk of faith and your journey, your process, all of that
Yeah.
together with me and Gino down here and what we were doing. It really reoriented that, where we had been, if you can look at like a triangle, we've got make disciples, plant churches, build bridges, but planting churches was kind of at the top of that triangle. And it's like the triangle rotated a little bit. So where we've got as the spearhead disciple making, and again, it's making disciples who make disciples,
Yeah.
and that's inside of the church, equipping our folks to make disciples outside of the church. So it's not just me and Gino out there on the outside and everybody else is warm and comfortable on the inside of the church. And now flowing from that, as you come down those two sides of the triangle, we've got as a natural outworking the planting of churches and the building of natural bridges, and the church isn't being isolated at all. So could you speak a little bit to that? What have you, as the DNA, and as you've seen our growth and transformation as a local church here in Sicily, what have you noticed, or what does that look
Yeah.
like to you, that change in our emphasis?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the first things I want to say, Brian, is like I think together you were working really to make it simple, that everyone can do it. So just like if we want to see multiplication, there is something that is you can repeat, often, something simple that everyone can apply, and that's come really from a very simple leadership style, that is a directive style, that when people are new in doing something, they don't know what to do. So we need to make them simple, how to make disciple, and all the stuff that we are using in the church and in Mission Sicily. It's coming from really to the life of Jesus. So that basically that's the main point. I think I that the cool thing is like that, bringing to the table, for myself, be very practical. I mean, my gospel is very practical, and I ask questions, to challenge people to think through things, because we have always a spiritual answer in the church. But then I ask you, okay, how you put in practice this stuff? So how
Yeah.
works? So that's
Yeah.
the main point. And young people, especially if you talk to young people, they don't need theory. They need practice it. So they need to know, what does it mean, the gospel in my daily life. So I don't know how much you want to go in detail on the practice of it. Use like, but basically it's like, the simple answer is like, what Jesus did, we are doing the same. So we try to do the same. We just want to copy and paste Jesus' life, and then we talk about, we use a tool that is a 4 chair disciple. That basically, where are you in your journey with Jesus? Where Jesus is challenging you right now. So if you are far from Jesus, you are sitting in chair 1, you are lost. So it's something like, we need, and then we ask the people in the church, what you do with the lost people, and just like sharing the gospel, they need to receive Jesus. And so how we go in the practical things, how we do it, when we do it, what's the main things that we need to do, pray for them, pray for the lost, it's like, and actually do it. And yesterday night we had the time, with the young people, and ask a bunch of questions, like, and we end up, talking about disciple making processes. Say, hey guys, who want to start to do that? And someone raised their hand and says, okay, now I ask you a question. Now I want to come with you. So what we do? What's the first thing we do? And they have hard time to answer, and I understand that. So we need to lead the way. We need to help them to do the first step, and they get excited. You know why, Brian? Because they will see God working around them, and they will do it.
Yeah, no, it's really great. We've had a lot of conversations, both about business and about ministry, over the
Yeah.
last few days as you've been down here. And one of the things that keeps coming back up, a recurring theme between us, is if the goal isn't clear, the
Yeah.
execution can't be very clear either.
Yeah.
It's going to get messy real
Yeah.
quick. And
Yeah.
so the more clear we can make the goal, the more clear our action steps can be to get us to that goal. And so, just like you're saying with the young people last night, making those steps super simple really helps to clarify, okay, well, this is the next thing that I'm going to go and do. And we were also talking about, because we grew up in the church, your parents were in the ministry, my parents were in the ministry. We've been around this stuff a long time. One of the things in the 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s that was super popular was having a I guess an approach, a process, a gimmick. Whether it was in the '80s with a Christian T-shirt, or a bracelet, or some kind of a bookmark, or I don't know, just something that kind of attracts attention and opens a conversation. And those things are fine. We're not saying those things are
Yeah.
bad, but when that becomes the disciple making process, something's failing, something's missing, something's wrong. And we relied on those tools to open the conversation. But what it seems like nowadays, what we've done is we've diminished or gotten rid of those gimmicky tools, because people have a nose for when they're being sold something, when something's just a formulated elevator pitch, kind of a sales gimmick, a sales pitch. They know when they're being sold something. And so we've diminished or gotten rid of those things, and we're emphasizing that assessment process now. The tool that you just mentioned, we have the acronym, using the name of Christ, or the title Christ, and we've used that as a way for us to assess where a believer is in his or her journey with Christ, and producing a disciple maker. And
Yeah.
the assessment tools are really coming back to, in that uber simplicity of just, where are you with your relationship with Jesus? what does that look like every day? Are you in love with him?
Yeah.
Are you in love with other people?
Yeah.
Does it motivate you? Are you moved with compassion? Are you moved with joy for the mission that he's given you? And those assessment tools become the metrics by which we help and encourage each other in the life of believers and disciples to continue being disciples
Yes.
above all, and then as a natural outworking, making disciples. And you're seeing that. I'd love to hear. I know that you're seeing this both in evangelical circles in the north, as well as coming down into Tuscany. You're doing some work there among businesses, and just speak a little bit about the different contexts where you're actually seeing fruit and results like that happen.
Well, the every context have a different language, and every culture has a different language. So in Italy we have different culture. We're not all Italian is all the same. So in Sicily is one culture, in the north is another culture, in the sport is a culture, in the business is another culture. So there is different language. It's like,
Mm.
and so the vision is like to see disciple who make disciple in every environment, our society, and every environment have different culture. So the unique things is the same strategy that we see in Jesus' life. If you look at John 1. So, and in John 1:26 is written that Jesus was among the people. So the first thing is like, even if you do in the church setting, you like, even the church, the church needs to have a vision. Like Viva Vangelo, the church has a vision to reach all Belpasso. It's like, so you need to be among the people. So the question is like, okay, how we are connected with these people. Like for me, doing the disciple making the business world, the question is like how I connect with them, how I incarnate with them, just the incarnational mission. So Jesus did that. Jesus was among them. It's like, and then the next day in John 1 is written like that John the Baptist was pointing to Jesus, that here the Lamb of God. So once we get in this context, how we point people to Christ, but doesn't mean to preach on the head of people without having no relationship. So we point to Christ, how we live out Christ in our life. Naturally, we have a relation with people, and we are disciple. We walk the kingdom principle in our life, and then we show Jesus first in our behavior towards people. And then what we do, we pray for them. So you just want to pray for the people. So like, it doesn't matter if you work in, you are reaching, your neighborhood with your church, or you're reaching the business people, you're reaching sport people. You adjust the language, and then you pray for the lost there, and then God opened the door and you are able to share the gospel with them. And Jesus, in the next day, he invited the disciple, come in, check who I am, come and see. It's like, that's the invitation that we do for people. So there is I would say there is a common path, because Jesus had a clear strategy in every kind of context, in the northern church, in the business world, here down in the south. What changes the relational strategy, how we connect with them. That's the key part. So that's a strategy question that we need to ask to ourselves, how we connect with people. But everything starts with our time with the Lord. Love God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and then love your neighbors like yourself. That's the key. I will say, if you know that there is a different guru around, talk about different kind of topic, I would say this is our secret. Love God first. That's the main thing. Love God first. You know what?
Secret ingredient. It's
Yes,
great.
but it's not secret. Everyone knows that. But sometimes we miss the point that Jesus needs to be our love, the number one of our life, and all the other things will happen.
Yeah, no, it's great. We were talking too just about the evolution of a church. We were talking about the trips that we took here over the last few months. Gino had gone to Israel with his wife Deborah, and actually, you were supposed to go to Turkey,
Yeah.
and you couldn't go. And then you passed that invitation to me, which thank you again. it was life changing. And so I got to go to Turkey, where we visited the seven cities, the seven churches where John had written in the book of Revelation. And of course, those cities, if you were to go back in time and rewind a little bit from that writing of those letters to the seven churches, these were churches largely planted by Paul, Apollos, Timothy, Silas, Barnabas, the team that was sent out from Antioch. And so in that planting of very famous churches like Ephesus, just thinking about Ephesus in particular brings so many things to mind, which we'll get to in a second. But in that planting of the church, then we fast forward years and years go by, and we see that Paul's writing to them, and then years and years and years go by, and John, in the book of Revelation, is writing to them. But we're seeing this evolution of the church, and it's interesting what Jesus comes back around and says through John to Ephesus is, go back to where you started, go back to your first love.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're saying. If we've lost that, if we get trapped in the gimmicks and the methodology and the well, I'm going to take them down this path, scripture, and I've got to give them these 5 colors and tell them what each, if it's all just methodology, we've lost the love of Jesus for us that then motivates us out in compassion. And I think that's one of the things that we've noticed, Gino and I have noticed in our people here. There's an enthusiasm and an excitement growing when they're having these conversations, because when we make that invitation of come and see, it used to be before, let's say before COVID or years ago, it used to be come and see the church, come and see, and I'm going to introduce you to the pastor. And we make that handoff and kind of wipe our hands from it and go, okay, Gino, here's your new disciple. Have fun,
Yeah.
making disciples. I'm going to, go back, and I'm being a fisher of men, so to speak, because I'm just bringing a guest to church. And now we've gone, okay, that is not what we want to see happening. We want you to be out there meeting with them, and the come and see is to come and see Jesus. And so let's sit down and have a coffee. Let's find a rhythm and a way to converse and have those conversations, and let's go deep. Let's see what you're searching for. Let's talk about how he is searching for you. Let's connect you to Jesus and give you that same love and the same passion that I have found in my life, because he loved me first, and now I'm loving him by loving others. And so they're coming into the faith and personal relationship with Christ before even coming to the church sometimes. In fact, just even tomorrow, Sunday, we're going to have some baptisms in the church. And these are folks largely who did not grow up in the church. They are not from our fold, so to speak. These are the result, the first fruits of a generation coming up now in our church who are out there making disciples in the marketplace and in the community and in the society, in the coffee shops and in in their homes and in their neighborhoods. They're out there making disciples, and they're bringing these to the church, going, okay, they're ready to embrace fully and to publicly acknowledge there. And this isn't the result of Pastor Gino's great discipleship or great sermons on Sunday. This is the result of people out there making disciples. This is what we want to see, right? I mean, this is what all of this effort has been about.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, and just yesterday, listening the story of, young people discipling other people and see their eyes, exciting, to do that. It's was very encouraging. It's like,
what was Luca telling you last night?
Yeah, I mean that's he was just like starting to disciple another young guy and it's we ask him how things are going, and so the guy is exciting. I mean just to see that actually we can be and do disciple. It's like how Jesus did it, so we can connect with him. It's like, and then the other leader Ruben, he says like it's incredible to see the humanity of Jesus help us to understand him deeper. What does it mean follow Jesus? That's a win. that's the Holy Spirit showing them, it's like who we are following. And so it's another way of, leading your life, and how another way to be a disciple. I mean, it's not a new way, it's the only
Mm.
way, but for us it's only new, right?
It's
So
the way that he
yeah,
showed us, that he
yes,
demonstrated, that
yeah,
he
yeah,
modeled, and
yeah,
I like that. I mean, that's a big part of what you've brought here, and that, the modeling that I saw out in Turkey on that trip. Because it's part of the same group that you've been a part of, and that has been discipling you, is the model of Jesus, and there's an emphasis. I won't say an undue emphasis. There's a balance there, but there's an emphasis on the humanity of Christ,
yeah,
because sometimes we think, oh, well, he was the Son of God, so he can do that, but I can only do this much or this part. But when we emphasize, look, he was fully human and fully divine, we can do the fully human part. And we can
yes,
follow in his footsteps, and that's actually what he asked us to do. That's
yeah,
what he said to do. And so, part of the metrics then, because we're talking about methodologies, the methodologies of how we're approaching or starting a conversation, and that elevator pitch and that sales thing has kind of gone away. But what we're emphasizing now is that the metrics and the methodology and the praxology, again, the model that Jesus gave us. And we're looking at, okay, well, in the ministry life of Jesus, we saw him in this phase emphasizing this with the disciples, and then in this phase he began cultivating this in them, and then he was sending them out by themselves, and then he was, and we're using that modeling to then go, okay, well, then how do we then participate
yeah,
in that same process and the same modeling? Am,
yeah,
am I shooting straight? Is this, exactly what,
yeah.
how you would say it, or is there a different, better
Um,
way?
no, no, it's exactly what you says. I mean, we should say all the time why you do what you do, and we reply because Jesus did it. That's it.
Uh,
We don't need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, I always says like there is nothing new to do. Just only one
yeah.
thing: just follow Jesus. It's
Yeah.
so simple. I mean, and sometimes if Colossian is written like that, the treasures of knowledge and wisdom is hidden in Christ. Paul says that. That means that we need to invest our time with Jesus. We need to spend time with him. I mean, that's the key part of everything. When people ask me questions about how to make disciple, I point them to the only guy can give them the answer, Jesus. So, and the question is like, are you willing to spend time with Jesus? Yes or no? Because if you are willing to spend time with Jesus, then you will see disciple making happen. If you're not willing to spend time with Jesus, let's talk about something else,
Yeah.
because it's all rooted there in our loving relation with the Father. That's it. And Jesus showed us every morning was waking up to to seeking the presence of the Father, seeking this loving relation with the Father, to understanding which is the next step, and just be loved by Him. That's the main things. That's the only things the disciple clearly in the gospel ask Jesus, teach us to pray.
Yeah.
They see the secret that everything Jesus was doing in their perfect, loving relationship with the Father.
Yeah. And it's almost like we're asking ourselves daily, am I being a disciple of Jesus? And we're asking ourselves that before we're asking, am I doing the things a disciple would do? Am
Yeah,
I making other
yeah,
disciples? We're asking that first in proper order. We even talked about it today, having the horse that draws the cart. It pulls the cart. It's the power for the cart,
yeah,
not the other way around. And so we're looking at that going, okay, what is my private life? What is my disciple life with Jesus like? Am I in love with him? Am I feeling his love for me? Am I expressing then that natural reaction? The outworking of that is that love for other people. And I love that you've brought that emphasis, and you're helping us with those metrics of assessing what that daily life is like. And this is something that Gino now is kind of living and breathing, because you've had that out of the boat experience years ago, and now both of us are able to kind of come along somebody like Gino,
yeah,
who left officially, as of the beginning of this year, his full-time job and stepped out of the boat. And you think, well, he was he was already doing a full time as a pastor, yeah, but he had to support his family, and the church doesn't give anything here to the pastor, and so he was working to support his family, but even that, was running into some problems and some trouble, just being able to get paid for work that he was doing. And this is a problem, systemic problem here in Italy. A lot of people experience that, and at a certain point, he kind of came to that same crossroad that you came to, and that I went through myself years ago as well. And we had to make that decision. Am I ready to step out of the boat and just, and maybe not everybody has that kind of crisis moment or crossroads moment, but for certain people, depending on what God's asking you to do at that juncture, at that time in your life, he may be calling you to step out of the boat
Yeah.
and walk by faith. And so Gino has done that. And I tell you, we had that same conversation of, look, whether you've got the full-time paid job or you've got absolutely no job, but you're being obedient, you've got to walk by faith, because, there's a challenge if you've got a stable income that you rely on the stability of that income as your rock. I mean, that's where your faith is. That's
Yes.
the temptation.
Yeah.
And at the other side, it can be really scary to step out without that. And so, but either case, you've got to walk by faith and be fully obedient. And so now we're on a journey, walking alongside Gino, going through that same thing. He's in month number 5 or 6 now of walking that out. But as he's doing that, he's seeing so many new kinds of gospel conversations that are opening up, and ways that he's able to equip other leaders in the church now to equip their people that they're leading, to be the disciple makers. And so we're actually truly seeing, for the first time here in the history of this 50 plus year church here in Bel Paso, we're finally seeing the fruit of multiplication for the
Yeah.
first time. And so I just praise God for that he's caused our paths to cross, and he's allowed us to journey together for this time. I hope for the rest of our lives, we'll see how
Yes.
God has designed everything. That would be my desire and my
Yeah.
plan, but we'll see where he calls each of us and how, as he leads us. But wow, I'm so excited for this next season. So I'd love to hear, just as we're kind of wrapping up this episode today, what do you imagine as we've gone through a little bit of the evolution here, what God has done, the momentum, the multiplication that's coming out of this now, really for the first time in the history of this really historical church for Italy standards. This is a very old church,
Yeah.
and we're seeing God revitalize, bring it to life, produce fruit, disciple makers, multiplication, all of that. What do you imagine for the rest of this year or even next year as God's calling you personally to do?
Well, I mean, it's my prayer is like, of course, like that we can see the same story that happened. The Jesus, right? The story in the church, Vivo Vangelo, that we three of us can really support, equip, and launch. Another pastor, lead pastor in another church, to see another church moving to be a ministry, to be a movement. That's my dream. Because I see the combination of three of us. We have different gifts that we put on the table, and we work very well together. And so I'm praying to see that the Gino will be full funded, quick and soon, that we can have less, let's say, thinking, a worry about these things. Even I mean, as a dad and as a father, I understand that. You, Brian, understand that. So it's like it's challenging. It's like, but I mean, there is such potential there that I'm really looking for, and I am expecting to see the glory of God. It's like it's around the corner. So our
Mm,
story together learned that there is God time. We just need to walk in faith and just be obedience. It's a long journey. It's a long game, I would say, in disciple
yeah,
making. But now
right.
we are seeing the fruit. Now we see, and then we say thanks to God that they allowed us to see this fruit. But really, I want to see another church that can be equipped. And then we can really come alongside. We need another lead pastor like Gino, like he has a vision,
Mm.
loving Jesus, and he really want to reach, his city for Christ. So that's my
Yeah.
prayer.
That's awesome. And tell us a little bit about GM. So you've got a ministry, and Gino and I actually came up just a few weeks ago to Turin, and we were with you and a group of others that are part of an emerging movement, let's say, of disciple makers
Yeah,
making other disciple makers.
yeah.
What is that group, that ministry about, and what are you seeing now in other towns like Mantova and others, and they're in Turin as well?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can say right now that we are see finally multiplication, because I mean it's been like 5 years, 6 years working that. So GM, that's mean Great Commission in Italian. It's an alliance of movement, a leader of the movement. So it's like it's people are called, to see disciple who make disciple in a specific field, mission field, are called by God. So now actually we are working, from in a church setting with. I mean, without this team, me, you, and Gino, there is another couple that they have another team that work in the church setting, and I personally doing movement in the business world, and there is another leader that it's working among young people. And so the idea is like it's pursuing the vision of disciple, make disciple in every environment of society. So GEM is really literally a movement of movements, and during this kind of alliance, we are seeking to support, equip, train, and encouraging and pray for leaders, and just to be together in this movement. So,
Okay.
and the idea is like we wanna own, this movement together and just be part of the same global movement of Jesus. So that's what we are thinking, and we are pursuing in GM.
I love it. I love it. Well, that's awesome. And Gino and I here, we're praying about what the next season of Mission Sicily
Yeah,
is to look like. This is something that I want to pour into for the rest of my life, as long as God allows me and gives me breath and strength and resources to do so, to continue seeing other pastors like Gino being raised up. That would be what I've got in my vision for the future. New leaders, even like we were talking about last night, people like Ruben being raised up to continue that multiplying
yeah,
function, the multiplication of the movement in new spheres, just like you're saying, in different sectors, whether sports or business or in the church or outside the church, in the society, wherever people find themselves. And I'm super excited about that. That's what we've been driving towards, for a decade now here in Belpaso, and we're finally seeing some of the fruit. And I love that you're a part of that, brother. I love your DNA, your heart for Jesus, and in love with Jesus, and how that's being shared here in this community. God's taking something from the extreme north of Italy, putting it together with something in the extreme south of Italy,
yeah,
and he's allowing those things to kind of grow and emerge. And who knows, we've been talking for a while about something like Mission Italy coming out of this. I don't know exactly, but those things are coming, and we're trying to be sensitive to the timing of that. And one of the ways that a lot of missionaries get into trouble is they jump too soon into something because there's emotion or finally
yeah,
some movement, and it takes so long to get there, but they don't see it through to fruition and a stability phase where it can grow on its own. And I don't want to do something premature.
yeah,
But as we're inviting people to pray into the movement, definitely pray for Gino, for the support raising. Hopefully we'll be coming back to the States either later this year in November or early next year in February. We're waiting on some family things. He's got elderly parents who are in ill health, and we're just looking at the situation to be wise with that. But and then there's your support raising that's still happening. And so I want to help people understand, if you're sowing into Mission Sicily, you are having an impact in the life of, in the ministry of Stefano and Grande Mandato in the north. You're having an impact in the life and ministry of Gino and Vivo Vangelo here in the south. Mission Sicily is having an impact on the building of the facilities here in the church. But if you would like to participate personally beyond what you're doing already with Mission Sicily, there is a way that people can connect. And so on our website, missionsicily.com, there is now a page for Gino where people can actually see pictures and get a bio and understand a little bit more about him. And there's a way for people to participate financially directly with him. And coming soon, there will be a page for Stefano as well, and people can connect and interact directly with you. And I love that people have such a heart for this. This is something, I'm not doing this hoping that people have actually asked me, how can I give directly to Gino, and how can I give to Stefano? And so again, if you're already participating with Mission Sicily, but you want to do something to impact these two men and their families. They both have little ones at home. They're married, have little ones at home. You're impacting their personal lives. You're impacting their ministry. You can do that as well. So anything to say about that, or to help us wrap up this episode today?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I was thinking like the work we are doing is like was a kind of investment of time, relationship trip, calling, encouraging, and crying and laughing. It's like it's all part of the journey. So if we find people with the same heart, understanding that disciple making is life. So it's not a job; it's our life. It's what we are doing. So if you really want to have part of that impacting life that lasts long, I mean, if you want to invest in the eternity. I mean, I really want to encourage you to be part of what God is doing here in Italy through Mission Sicily, through Brian, Gino, and me, myself, that really can last long. But you need to be ready to see the glory of God. I'm sure about that. So we can you know why I'm saying that, Brian? Not because we are good, not because we are great leaders, just because we're really seeking Jesus and do what Jesus did. That's why I confident say that. And that's why I mean, the only reason I can say that is because of Jesus.
Yeah, I love it. No, I love it. Thank you so much, Stefano, for being a part of what we're doing down here, and allowing us to participate. As I said, Gino and I were just up there a few weeks ago. We're participating in what you're doing, even online, in some of these groups that have been created. We're getting rhythm and patterns to follow, multiplication happening, movement among leaders of movements. And it's just such an incredible joy. I am so thrilled that God allows us to do stuff like this. It's something that I think all three of us feel this is what we were made for,
Yeah.
and what a joy to be able to do that together, and
Yes.
to just walk in unity. And yet celebrate our diversity, and how each of us has parts that complement the other, and God's allowed all that to come together to build a synergy, and it just orchestrated something beautiful between us. I'm so glad to be able to call both of you my brothers in faith and in life and in this journey. So thank you for
Thank you.
participating in all of that. And man, can't wait to have you on the show again in the future. And hopefully I'll be back up to Turin soon as well. And we'll get to do another one of these podcast
Yes.
episodes. In the meantime, go to missionsicily.com. Check us out online anytime. And again, you can find a page for Gino and for Stefano if you want to learn more about them. All right. God bless you, brother. I will talk to you soon. And thanks, everybody, for
God
listening.
bless.
And we will talk to you again soon
Yeah.
as
Bye
well.
bye. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.